Hello everyone! This week we had some interesting discourse on the Twitter about subjects like canon lore in relation to the Chronicles, how you could just write your own books if you don't like what Blizzard has created, and the role of a Blizzard historian. Rather interesting discussions and takes, and part of what stood out for me was the reaction to finding out what a Blizzard historian actually does. I had the same response, but about a half year earlier, as another historian went to Reddit to talk about their experiences at Blizzard. With that in mind, I thought, why not talk about this Reddit post, talk a little bit about how the sausage is made. So you all might remember this legendary moment at BlizzCon.
I just finished reading The Shattering yesterday, and I noticed something. It said that Falstad Wildhammer was going to be on the Council of Three Hammers, but in the beta it's Kurdran Wildhammer, and Falstad is not in the game at all. What happened to him?
Isn't Falstad dead? From Day of the Dragon? No?
No, he survived, and in fact, he was the leader of Airy Peak in Vanilla WoW through Wrath of the Lich King.
Right, of course. Right. Yeah, Alex, what's up with that?
Thanks for pointing that out. We're gonna get that fixed.
Thank you.
Bet.
Turning Ian Bates, aka Redshirt Guy, into an icon. And now you can visit him in-game within Ironforge, right next to Falstad as the Wildhammer fact-checker. But Blizzard would have their response, their counter unit ready as the very next year.
One thing I usually hear about when it comes to being a historian is, isn't that just like a glorified fact-checker? You know, it's like, don't they have that in like other things? I'm like, actually no, being a historian encompasses so much more. I mean, I could go into a litany of things that I do on a day-to-day basis other than just checking like different texts and stuff like that, but I'm going to let that go because I just thought there's one major important thing that historians do, and that's to back these folks up right here. They are jamming out and rocking epic stories and narratives for you folks, and they shouldn't have to remember the minutia that's come before it.
That's right.
What they do is a labor of love.
That's right.
They do this from the heart, and they shouldn't have to... They shouldn't have to be expected to know what a caliber of a C-14 Gauss rifle is or what year Thrall was born. I mean, these guys they're busy making worlds for us to enjoy. So the way I think about historians is a perfect metaphor here.
It's like this. Red shirt guy, meet blue shirt guy.
Bring it. In all seriousness, though, going back to topic, I picture historians as part of a machine gunner team. Now, if you guys know, usually a machine gunner team is two folks. There's one Hepcat that's basically on the gun, plugging away at his targets before him. These gentlemen. And there's always that guy that's behind the scenes that's making sure the right ammunition's being loaded into the gun and making sure that thing doesn't jam so they can continue hitting the things that they need to hit. Well, that's the historians come in. We're that guy that's sitting there just feeding the ammunition into the gun, making sure that they can keep rocking out what they do, because they're rock stars.
Where were you on the WoW panel last year?
Front row.
The bullet's jammed, the barrel's overheated.
The banana in the barrel.
Can I be on your panel next time?
Sorry, yes.
Yes! Dream number 2 is made here,
I need you, baby.
Blue Shirt Guy, aka Sean Copeland, was brought out on stage, who has been with Blizzard for a very long time, and even to this day is trying to hold the line and feed the right ammunition. In an interview, he describes his task as, "We handle lore reviews for publications and artwork, research and document game events and characters, maintain our lore bibles, conduct lore seminars for employees, take part in a wide range of meetings from brainstorming sessions to process development, and so much more." Warcraft's story and history is ever growing, so I can imagine that the task of feeding the right information, it's become quite massive. Sean's interview was from 2013, the Reddit post from a former historian, that is about 6 months ago. Good morning, everyone. I'm not sure about the rules regarding this type of post, but after perusing a thread about the layoffs to the lore team, I was hit with the realization once again that few understand what it is the lore team does. So, I would like to try to remedy that. I'd like you to know I'm speaking from my personal experience as a historian dedicated specifically to World of Warcraft. Feel free to ask me any questions. although I will mostly refrain from speaking about individuals or things held under NDA such as specific tools, processes, or unannounced projects. A quick bit about my time as a historian for WoW. I was the only historian dedicated to a specific IP starting in summer 2022. I worked on Dragonflight, the startings of the World Soul Saga, Dragonflight Codex, Chronicle 4, War of the Scaleborn, and basically every cutscene and cinematic within that span. While we all may have disagreements about the story and its quality, I'm proud to say that there have been few retcons and conflicts that have snuck through during my time on the team. We'll rotate back to the few retcons and conflicts thing in just a moment. The lore team can be described in a variety of ways. I frequently call it story quality assurance, while our most senior member, Sean Copeland, would describe us as park rangers, who can help writers and designers navigate the park, show them where the dangers are, but ultimately lack control of it. But in short, our job was 3 parts: material review, resource creation, meeting consultation. Firstly, to review material, whether it be game content, cinematics, or novels, and give notes about the lore. These notes could be outright contradictions, things that could cause confusion, or even a character acting in a way that seems unlike them. The main limiting factor here was both that our team was quite small, and that our work was not proactive. What I mean by the latter is that we worked on something if we received a request to do so. Because of this, tons of game content and marketing materials flew under the radar. Books and cinematics, on the other hand, which were much more concretely planned, was basically never overlooked. The results of my notes would vary. Every team and individual responds to feedback differently. Some people I've sat with and brainstormed how they could fix the conflict I called out. Other times, I was told the potential issue was too minor for anyone to notice or care, and on occasion, you have people ignore your comments entirely because it's too late in the development process, or because they think what they're doing is cool enough to justify the conflict. Sometimes they were right, and I was nitpicking, but at the end of the day, even if they're writing lore that states that dwarves have always been born from eggs laid by trogs, I have no power to stop them from doing so. The best I personally could do, if I felt particularly strong about it, is point it out to the newser and say, "Yo dog, you aware of this?" So a historian does not get to grab the lore bible and declare, "You can't do this. It conflicts with the lore that came before." They don't have the power or that role. Selling someone a no is a hard line in the sand. And you could imagine that next time, they simply won't ask for you to check it anymore. I do like the part where different creatives have different ways of being dealt with. It's easy for us to say that this is how you're supposed to do it, right? But so many people, so many different styles of working and discussing. You get more done when you're flexible and adaptive. If the creative teams wants to push something, they can. Not to mention that not every bit of content is apparently fact-checked by the historians to begin with. When I read this, I tried to imagine a scenario where I could see a discussion like this play out, and I remember the line from Retaking Gilneas.
I see you, Father. Always hiding from your pain. It's why you built that wall in the first place.
And this line is what I imagine would be a hypothetical moment of conflict. A creative who's come up with this line, breaking down the walls, not just the real ones around Gilneas, but also the ones around your heart. It's a beautiful line, except the character of Gan Greymane, it puts those walls up out of a position of strength and arrogance. That was the point to his character, an essential part of it, and the arc that he's been on ever since. So while the line might be beautifully written and has double meaning, it doesn't apply to this character. It conflicts with the history that came before with this character, which means that you now have his daughter, the one who was about to be given the mantle of leadership over Gilneas. She doesn't understand who her father was and the road that he's been on. But that's all imaginary, of course. Please keep in mind, I don't have actual inside knowledge of the workers at Blizzard, but reading this, that scenario came to mind. The second part was resource creation and documentation. Developers oftentimes are busy developing and don't have time to update their own documentation. We have artists and writers, especially outsourced for books, who may not be intimately knowledgeable about a specific character, place, group, or peoples in WoW. To help these peoples be able to get their bearings and have a starting point, We create a variety of resources. We have videos giving a rundown on what is Warcraft. I created a variety of visual style sheets for WoW races, displaying hair and skin colors, features like tusks or fangs, number of digits. Lastly, I was in the process of changing and updating how we document story information to make it more useful as a sort of design document for writers or designers. What I personally wonder is if they have like an in-house Wikipedia page. They do mention in one of their answers that they make use of community resources, and of course, they need to fact-check the information as something like Wikipedia, it is filled in by the fans.
That's what it says on Wikipedia.
Yeah. Wikipedia? Using Wikipedia as your source of information?
Sometimes the information is half accurate or incomplete or simply wrong. Like the other day I checked if the Dark Heart was made by Iridacron. And while he did indeed empower it, it was originally created and left behind by Neltharion. But imagine having an in-house database with personnel hired to keep it up to date so everybody can check it out. I wonder if such a thing exists. Creating some of this information is also referenced as being part of their favorite lore things to be involved in. Compiling a list of all lore locations that have not been visited in-game, like they mention Karesh, or working to flesh out some languages with rules and syllable guidelines, and helping out with cutscenes that had Virak in them, showing that being a historian is not just remembering the past, but you also get to have a creative role you add to the world that's being created. Thirdly, was acting as a lore consultant in meetings. Most of the times I did this was for in-game cinematics, but generally the way that it goes is you sit in on a creative meeting, and as they pitch ideas back and forth, you do your best to call out any potential issues in real time. Moving to Zoom for these was supremely helpful, as I was able to also fact-check myself before chiming in, but really, if I had an inkling there may be a conflict, I was more than welcome to state as such and get back to them after confirming it after the meeting. Lastly, I want to make mention of the lore team's size. Me and 2 other historians were hired around the end of 2022. Before this, the lore team bounced between 2 to 3 members. With 5 people, we were swamped. I cannot imagine how they handled anything with 2 people. When we grew to 5, there was a very obvious improvement in our relation to the teams and groups that we could service. The books team specifically, I feel benefited greatly. While I feel the lore team's value can be hard to quantify, I have seen the sausage being made, and I can say with confidence that they bring value to the end product. Sadly, I do not know how they will handle anything now that they're down to 2 people again. 2 people on the historian team. No wonder that the gun is getting jammed with bananas again. And this inches back to another video that I was thinking on, the importance of having canon lore. It's difficult to check every bit of lore that comes out of the machine, but man, I find it so important. As the historian posts, it might be hard to quantify, but the audience response has been clear. People nerd out about the world that you create, due to the world that you created. Having it suddenly change due to errors or newly envisioned directions by creators, despite what previous lore sets, is jarring at times. Asking your audience for money for, at times, completely wrong information, for example, Chronicles Volume 4 or the Dragonflight Codex, it causes them to no longer want to invest. Part of the job for the creatives is to give us exciting new experiences and storylines, but remembering the past is also part of the journey. The job of historian, or the job of maintaining your ever-growing fantasy world, it's an investment. With 2 people, you genuinely gotta wonder how we only get so few mistakes. Obviously, there's also the love and attention of the creatives that build the world. You don't need to be a historian to know the world's history, but it does shine an interesting light on keeping the canon and more use of point of view. Yet, at the same time, having a historian check the information, it does not guarantee that there won't be mistakes. The one posting here, they make mention of working on Chronicles Volume 4 and the Dragonflight Codex, and how books and cinematics, on the other hand, they were much more concretely planned, basically never overlooked. Yeah, you might have caught the shit show that is Chronicles Volume 4. The book contradicting timelines and events compared to what we see in-game, and for no apparent reason. And then the Dragonflight Codex, which was more recent to this Reddit post, which also had massive lore mistakes, one of them being that the dragons can't reproduce. Even though part of Dragonflight's gameplay, it's the whole whelpling daycare, one of the first quests revolves around their eggs. The historian mentions reading the draft after Dragonflight's launch, and one of the first quests, as I mentioned in Dragonflight, it has us deal with the dragon eggs, so it goes to show that even with historian oversight, not all mistakes are going to be caught. In one of the questions, they're asked about the mistakes to slip through. As for the Dragonflight's Codex, it can't be viewed as true word from God objective canon, as it is written by an in-universe character. At least, that was the reasoning for leaving in things that were not strictly 1000% accurate. Now, I might make a video discussing the use of point of view in more depth at a later time, but I think I'm reading this right. I think that they're saying that the reason why they had mistakes in the book is because they're pretending it's from Khadgar's point of view. Interesting use of point of view. So someone making a quest could effectively write fanfiction, and just because it's rule of cool, it couldn't be overturned. Sounds a little disheartening for someone whose job it is to create and catalog a cohesive world. I can't speak to the whole quest design process, but I do believe that base level quest designers need to get their ideas approved at some level, but I'm not sure who approves that, and lore is not a part of it. From a strictly lore team perspective though, sometimes, yes, that's what it can look like from afar. If it has some sort of major lore issue, we can trigger another discussion on it, but Blizzard often prefers to treat lore as somewhat malleable rather than strictly concrete, and would rather try to massage it than toss it or start over. This question and answer is super interesting to me, because it's very much about where do you draw the line. The rule of cool has been something that has driven Warcraft storytelling for as long as I know it. Someone in the room says, wouldn't it be cool if? And they mold the world to fit this idea. For example, wouldn't it be cool to see the orcs of the original Horde again? And after filling in the dots, you get something like Warders of Draenor. But what happens if an idea conflicts or it doesn't work out? For example, wouldn't it be cool if Sylvanas was allied to the source behind the Lich King? To me, a pillar of the character of Sylvanas is her hatred for what Arthas the Lich King had done to her. So in order to sell the idea of this being a cool storyline, a path that a character would go on, you gotta bring the big guns in order to mess with that foundation. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. It does require some really sick ideas to make it work. But that is the danger of retroactively messing around with your building blocks. Going back in time and adjusting things, it comes with big risks, but it's not impossible to be rewarded either. Another example, wouldn't it be cool if Illidan came back? And he did, with newly added motivations, newly added storylines that worked out and they paid off greatly. Of course, these two examples are not one and the same, right? Like, Illidan's storyline did not conflict with the character who he was before, whereas with Sylvanas, I would definitely answer the question, like, wouldn't it be cool if Sylvanas worked for the Lich King with a hard no? But, you know, that's me. That doesn't mean that there is not a realm that we can think of in which this storyline would work, right? Don't forget, once upon a time, we killed Illidan as a bad guy at the top of the Black Temple, and then he was brought back. So, these discussions on creating a cohesive world, they're difficult. In my opinion, you can't be rigid and stuck in this is what it was, and so it is impossible to change. But on the other hand, treating your story like it can be whatever you want is the other extreme, right? There's a fine line where the quality of your storytelling lies, and the job of a historian to navigate that park. Once again, it seems like a quality that is required to keep that balance. Knowing how small the team has become, while they're leaning heavy on the story for selling the World Soul Saga, it kinda has me scratch my head a bit, but yeah, thus concludes our small insight into the world of a Blizzard historian. So thank you very much, Historian Wolfgang, for putting out this post, and thank you very much for watching, everybody. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, see ya!